knowledge. So then when you look at that aspect, of course, in quantitative research, what we basically do is we are actually very comfortable in doing quantitative research. The reason is you're looking at the previous literature, and it helps you a lot to understand what's been done and what's not been done. So your quantitative research will be basically focused, therefore, on what you have understood, what you have found through a rigorous literature review as the literature gap, right? So for that, of course, therefore, if you are going to do a quantitative research, that actually will be depending on the available knowledge. So you will not be able to decide whether I'm going to do a qualitative or quantitative before understanding the existing amount and the body of knowledge regarding the research domain that you are going to carry out. So qualitative research comes whenever that you cannot find enough literature for you. That is, of course, mainly that's how it forces us to go for a qualitative research. You may be very fond of conducting quantitative, but of course, as a thumb of rule, whenever we do not have enough literature, because in a quantitative research, we have to have enough of literature for us to justify the research problem, to justify the selection of the variables. And of course, you have to have enough of literature for you to understand the indicators for the variables. So whenever you cannot have enough support from evidence from the existing knowledge, you may have to do it by yourself. So secondary data, right? Or literature review is actually secondary data for an academic research. So then whenever literature is not provide you enough guidance on deciding on those aspects of a quantitative research, it might take you to do a qualitative research, right? So with that little understanding, we will be moving to see what actually I'll be covering today. So I will introduce you what qualitative research is. Of course, the title of the webinar is also qualitative research beyond the numbers. So we are actually not dealing with numbers as research data. There can be data, there can be numbers, but we are not, that is not our primary data to analyze when it comes to qualitative research. So we are depending on, of course, there can be explanations, opinions, experience of people, ideas. So that is going to be qualitative. So because qualitative data will tell you a deeper story, more than numbers, right? When you look at a number, you will only see the number, but why that number came, what is the story behind is not reflected through the numbers. So therefore, when you're going to do a qualitative research with that qualitative information, it would give you a more in-depth understanding of the research phenomenon that you are exploring on. And also I'll be touching a little about qualitative data collection, and also maybe not a very detailed explanation of data analysis, but I'll explain you briefly what is the nature of qualitative data analysis, and also when it comes to qualitative research, like in quantitative, because if you have experience in carrying out quantitative research, we know basically you measure the reliability and validity of your data that you have gathered for your research. Similarly, we also have different criteria, the different way of looking at that in qualitative research. So this is basically what I'll be touching today. Right, so we'll start with what is qualitative research. Now, when it comes to qualitative research, John W. Creswell is one of the well-known authors in qualitative research methodology. He had authored many books. Out of that, there's a book that covers all the research, all the qualitative research designs. Of course, in my short webinar today, I'm not going to touch different qualitative research designs, given the time limitation. But in his book, of course, he's describing all these research methods. And when you have to do them, that depends on the nature of the research problem that you are going to carry out. So I'll be not touching that area today. Instead, I'm going to give you an overall understanding about what is qualitative research. So in his book, this is how he defined qualitative research. Okay, so if you look at it, he says, I think, now that's how he describes qualitative research. I think metaphorically of qualitative research as an intricate fabric composed of many threads, many colors, different textures, and various blends of material. Now, if a very like a very intricate, very small intricate piece of intricate fabric, if you are given a small piece of fabric with the different designs, different colors, different textures, right? So the way that everyone, the way that people will be describing that piece of cloth, piece of fabric, will not be the same. It'll be different, right? Although it is the same piece of fabric. If I give you the same piece of fabric to every one of you in the class, in today here with us, you will, I mean, there is no guarantee that everyone will be describing. You are actually going to describe that piece of fabric, okay? You can see the same thing, right? But there isn't any guarantee that all of us will explain that, sorry, describing that. All of us will describe that in the same way. Someone might would pick to describe about the colors first, or someone might take how you feel it, the texture of the fabric, or someone else might be describing the designs of the many threads. Or so that will be depending on what is, of course, who we are, I would say, right? Who we are in the sense like we are a result of, now, of course, physically we look, we all have the same features and all, but still inside, inside within us, we are very different. Okay, how we have been different people, different individuals. It is based on the experience, your life experience as a result of living these many of years. Right, so who you have associated, who your parents are, who your siblings are, what is your school, where you're living from, where you're coming from, what is your background, what is your education background, your like everything, your demographics, and everything will decide who you are. For us to certain a particular opinion towards something that is actually have been framed by the different experience, the exposure that you had, right? So everyone, that's why we hold different ideas of the same thing, right? So that's why there are so many arguments, so many criticisms, so many different opinions, ideas about the same thing. So similarly, when this particular piece of fabric is given to you, people, will differently explain that. You will describe that in different ways. So if you have your favorite color in that piece of fabric, of course you will unknowingly pick that up, because you straight away see your favorite color in there, right? If you really, when you feel it, if you feel it very soft, and if you really like that way of a piece of fabric, of course you will start to talk about that, and more than other features, other attributes of that piece of fabric, you will describe, highlighting that aspect, because that is what you really like, and what you really like will be much more apparent, prominent when you see something, someone, or whatever, right? So therefore, qualitative research is also like that. That's what he's going to tell. Qualitative research is also like that. People will describe. They will actually have different ideas on the same thing, right? So therefore, you will not be able to give a very complete or a comprehensive understanding of the same thing. So that's why it says the fabric is not explained easily or simply, right? So different people will explain that different ways. So you never can see that you never can say that this is a complete explanation. Okay, there can be, now even if you analyze each of the responses separately, and if you're trying to get a very comprehensive, very holistic explanation of the piece of fabric, if you keep on giving it to some more people, they would come up with different other ways of looking at it. So therefore, we never can say that this is the, this is the exact explanation of this particular piece of fabric. So if you take piece of fabric as the research phenomenon that you are focusing on in your research phenomenon is your research problem, or you can also call it reality or ontology in your research. Okay, so your research problem, what it is, your research phenomenon. Usually in qualitative research, we commonly use this word more than the research problem. We call it research phenomenon. What is your research? It's the basic, the focal idea of your what you are going to explore. So that is your research phenomenon. So then if you take this piece of fabric as the research phenomenon, and when you're going to collect data, right, whenever this piece of fabric is given to people, and when that people are coming up with different explanation, same thing would happen when we are conducting qualitative research as well, because when you take your research phenomenon and when you are going to interview different people on the same thing, they will, give their different ideas, opinions of the same thing. It depends on who they are, what is their experience so far regarding what you are questioning, what you are exploring. So that's when research philosophies have come into play, right? So research philosophies are telling us about how to approach a particular research problem, right? How different views of the same thing can come from. So the research philosophies are actually giving us the reasons for that. Now, if you take constructivism, it says based on the context of the researcher, okay, the respondent, of course, based on the context of the respondent. When the context becomes different, the ideas will also be different with the influence of the context. Now, for example, when you're doing a research, if you take an interview from India and Sri Lanka, so our cultures are different from their cultures. So therefore, with that influence, the ideas that we are holding on different things would be different. So just to give you an idea about what is research philosophies, of course. So different research philosophies they are telling us the different ways of that we are looking at the world. Okay, so here also that happens. So therefore, in qualitative research, we acknowledge multiple realities. I would have to, that is something that we really rely on, that really believe in qualitative research. We believe multiple realities. Multiple realities is like, now even when you take this particular piece of fabric, you never get the same explanation from everyone. So reality is what's actually happening in this world. So that is what you want to know. By doing research, we are trying to bring that out, because knowledge is that's how knowledge is built up, right? That is how knowledge is built up. So by doing research, we are trying to reveal the things that we did not know before. So that is reality, part of reality. So when you look at the same thing from different views, so that is called multiple realities. Now, if you have a particular mountain there, and if you look at that particular mountain from this side, and someone else is looking at the same mountain from the other side, it is the same mountain, but we are looking at the same thing from different angles. So when that particular angle getting different, how you describe that will also be different, because what your view is different from the other person's view, who is looking at the same thing from a different perspective, from a different angle. So it doesn't mean that the person A's explanation is wrong or person B's explanation is correct. There are different explanations of the same thing. So this is highly acknowledged in qualitative research. So you have to get that idea very first, because most of the people believe, since quantitative research is the main common popular domain of doing research, most of the people believe that qualitative research should also be able to generalize, right? And also, you are looking for a bigger sample in qualitative research. I'll come to that point later on in detail. So it's not like quantitative research. It's a different way of doing research. Okay, so therefore, we should not look at qualitative research from a quantitative research mind. Of course, if you're evaluating qualitative research from a quantitative perspective, quantitative research's point of view, it's not going to be correct for that person. We never can compare, two different things, apple and orange together, right? So there are two different things. You never can put them in the same basket and evaluate, right? So therefore, in qualitative research, we believe, we acknowledge subjectivity is acknowledged, right? Subjectivity is acknowledged, it is accepted. That's the purpose of qualitative. One of the purposes of qualitative research is to reveal that subjectivity, right? So as a result of doing that research, we get to know, okay, different people have different ideas. So that is also a research contribution, okay, contribution to the knowledge. Everyone is not going to see the same thing in the same way. There are different perspectives of the same thing. right? So that is also something new that we get to know as a result of doing qualitative research. So therefore, single reality, which you usually stick in quantitative research, is not what we praise, what we acknowledge in qualitative research. That is actually multiple realities that we have to remember when we are doing qualitative research. You'll have to change the way that you are thinking. You know that positivism paradigm is not going to be working here. That is called positivism. When you take quantitative research, that is highly depending on positivism philosophy. But in qualitative research, we really do not rely on one single reality. Positivists believe about a single reality, right? There is only one. There's only one single way of happening the things. That's how quantitative research paradigm is working on. But qualitative research is different to that. So we always acknowledge there can be more than one reality of the same thing. So there are multiple realities that is acknowledged in qualitative research. One other thing that you got to know is in qualitative research, we are carrying out. Now, if you look at the nature of the reality now, I think you may know what is reality now. Reality is your research problem or your research phenomenon that you have chosen to explore about. So that is your reality. So we will, so in qualitative research, it's always multiple realities. And the other thing is we are looking at unique realities in qualitative research. So I'll give you one example. This has been my all-time favorite example because since the many people from different research backgrounds might have joined, I'll take a general example. Now, when you look at the domestic violence, right? You don't really have to come from sociological background to understand it, but we already have heard of many incidents that are happening in our households. So we know a little about therefore domestic violence. So when you say domestic violence, the common scenario, the common case that we get to see is that actually women, right? Women are harassed by men mainly. Commonly, that is what's happening, right? So that is the common scenario, the common reality when it comes to domestic violence. Whenever you say domestic violence, most of the cases that we have heard of are about men harassing women. But there have been cases, very rarely, there have been cases, maybe they are not getting reported, but however, there have been cases that men have been harassed by women as well, right? So then if you take that particular context, of course, you can say that is a unique reality, because unique is the opposite of common. Now, when you take quantitative research, you're actually looking at the common realities. Since they are common realities, since that is the aspect of that particular research or that particular research problem that is most frequently happening. Now, when you take domestic violence, what more frequently is happening is men are harassing women. That is the common reality, okay? But unique reality, on the other hand, is the other way around is also happening, but not that many cases are being reported. So therefore, that is a unique reality. Unique is something that is not always that you can find. You know what is unique, right? So then, in qualitative research, basically, we are looking at these unique realities. So since you are looking at unique realities, you do not get much of literature, because that's not been everyone's cup of tea. That's not been everyone's interest of doing research, okay? So that's why we need to do a qualitative research. On the other hand, whenever you go and start searching for literature in academic research, we know that we are starting our research from searching literature. That is the point. You never can think of a research problem, and if you're trying to justify that, that's not going to work. So you'll have to work other way around. You have to go and search literature. You may have your common idea in your head, but with that, you have to start searching literature, and then you will be able to see to what extent other people, the other scholars, the other researchers have worked on that and where they have stopped. So for that, you must go through the existing body of knowledge for you to understand what is the nature of the present body of knowledge regarding the research that you're going to do. So whenever once you have done that, or when you're in the process of doing that, you'll be able to understand. That is when, of course, you will take the decision whether this research has to be carried out as a quantitative or qualitative research. Okay. So therefore, whenever you do not see, you do not get many literature related to your research phenomenon that you are thinking of doing, of course, you will have to go for a qualitative research, because whenever you cannot find enough literature to prove your research problem, and also to understand the variables, the relationship between those variables, the way that they have been measured, and also when you cannot establish the hypothesis. And so through the literature, that will compel you to take it forward as a qualitative research. Right. So the two things that I want to highlight at the very outset here is qualitative research is about multiple realities and unique realities. All right. I don't know whether the participants can raise questions, right, Udita, at any time? Or are we going to wait till the end of the session? So if anything is not clear, of course.
I think, ma'am, it's better to give the Q&A session to raise their questions.
All right. Okay, sure. Right. Okay. So if anything is not clear, you can raise at the end of the webinar. Right. So then, as I told you, as researchers or the scientists are more comfortable with carrying out quantitative research. The reason is it's little easier as well practically, because it's about, numbers. Analyzing numbers becomes very easy because you have softwares. It's just about you define them. You have to get your research variables defined, and then you'll have to input. You have to enter those numbers into the software, and it will, just you have to select the right statistical tool that you have chosen. And then it's about running the statistical tool, and it will analyze the entire set of data, and it will give you the results. So it's not like in qualitative research, okay? Qualitative research data analysis is an entirely different process. It is highly depending on you. It is highly depending on you. It highly depends on the researcher. Qualitative data cannot be analyzed by a software. There are softwares for you to get the support to organize data, but it will never interpret data for you. It cannot be done by a software. It's you always have to interpret your data. So therefore, most of the people would like to do quantitative research, because data collection, data analysis becomes a little easier because that is dealing with numerical data. Okay. And when you look at this scale, I think you know about Likert scale. The people who are very much familiar with quantitative research, they know what is Likert scale. So my other argument, my other justification for qualitative research is, so it's actually beyond the numbers, of course. Why I say like that is, now when you look at these Likert scale numbers, right? So whenever you have given your questionnaire to the respondents, they are only allowed to tick on the numbers. Whenever you can see that they have tick in between numbers, you're going to discard that response, that questionnaire, so you are not going to take it to your data analysis process. Okay, you're going to ignore that the data screening process. But in reality, it can happen, right? Now, when you are trying to give a number to whatever that is going on your head, okay, whenever you have to say something is good or bad or neutral or weak or whatever, right? It's just a judgment that is creating in your head, right? So that judgment is very qualitative, but now you'll have to convert that judgment to a number. Okay, so you are trying to convert your judgment to a number, and it's again your own evaluations, but it cannot always be exactly 3 or 4. It can be somewhere in between. So you might be in doubt, to pick number 3 or 4, because it can be 3 or it can be 4 also. And when you are given the same question maybe an hour later or the other day, there isn't any guarantee that you will put the same numbers for the questions that you have provided the response. So that's the issue with numbers. Why? Because if you look at the nature of the research we do, we are social scientists. Okay. Now the broad research domain can be classified into two broader categories of natural science and social science. So we are into, I don't know whether there are natural sciences in these groups, natural scientists, but mainly if it is about, management or sociology, psychology, that is that those are coming under social sciences. Social sciences is, if anything, is about people. If that is not about the Minisungi or a total body echo, if it is not about that, the physical organs of your research, so that is going to like that is coming under natural science, but we are basically doing social science. So then it's about the people's behavior, why they make a decision, why they do something, why they do not do something else, and their ideas, opinions, So that's a social science. That's social science. So then in social science, that is about abstract concept. We call it abstract concepts, right? In quantitative research, in natural scientists, what they're dealing with, they are called concrete concepts because they have developed scales to measure them. They are very, it doesn't matter who is going to measure that, it gives you the same number, right? For example, if you want to measure your weight or your height, there is a scale that is already standard scale that is developed. So like just because of two people, if one person is measuring your weight and another person is again measuring your weight, so it doesn't mean that it is not going to, it is going to be different just because two people have measured your weight. It could be the same because you're using the same scale. It does not depend on the person who is measuring it, right? But in social science, it is not like that. It is not like that, okay? So it is, it's always depends on the person's beliefs, ideas, experience, and everything. So that's why they are called abstract concepts. And the concepts that you find in natural science, of course, they are called concrete concepts because they are very, very, very clear, very focused, and then they are highly like established concepts. It might not depend on the person who is doing the research, okay? So the same methodology has been done to social science as well. So that's why we find it a little quite challenging for us to deal with the numbers in social science, because you're trying to quantify something qualitative, something not quantitative by default, okay? You are trying to quantify, you're trying to give a number for what you think, right? Because it's by default, it is naturally coming as your thoughts, but then you're trying to give a number to your thoughts. So it could be quite challenging and it is not reliable as well. So that's again can be another reason why we have to at least have to have a qualitative component of your research, because it will give you the real picture behind this number, right? Why you actually put number 4. So number 4 is visible here, but the reason behind that is not visible when you collect these numbers and when you analyze that. Why they have given number 4, why they have given number 2, that is the most important input that we have to have for us to make good decisions in our research setting. Okay, so that can be one another reason why qualitative research are quite important, especially in social science. Right. So theory, I think you know the difference between theory and literature. So theory is what is already there as established body of knowledge. There are so many theories that are coming in. If I talk about some well-known common theories, we have so many management theories, leadership theories, motivational theories. Everyone would know about, right? Maslow's hierarchy theory and two-factor theory, hierarchy theory, or maybe leadership theories, right? Transactional leadership, transformational, situational, something like that. So those are theories that some people have developed, and that is established body of knowledge. So they are called theory, right? Theory, and then literature is actually when they are the findings or the outcome of the research that other people have carried out. Okay, they are the findings of the research that other people have carried out. You can call them literature. So when you search for literature, of course, you're looking at the studies that other people have carried out similar to the research that you are planning to carry out. So that is literature review, right? And theory is again a part of the literature, but it is the established body of knowledge. So you are going to see whether something is relevant there when you pick a particular theory for your research problem. So usually you are selecting a theory for your research problem because it is relevant to you. Okay, because it's relevant to your research problem. So then you have to prove why you are selecting that particular theory. So it's because that theory is guiding your research. So that's basically the slight difference between theory and literature. So when it comes to qualitative research, now I told you that qualitative research is about unique realities, and unique realities, why they are unique realities? Because many other people have not done research about them. Okay, so therefore, when you go and search for literature, when you go and start to search for literature, you find that there aren't enough literature for you to organize your research, to design your research, of course. Okay, because no enough evidence for you to prove your research problem, that this is a problem, you know. So you have not enough evidence to prove it as a problem. Nature of the problem is not very clear, because with the available information, you cannot decide, you know, what exactly you can see that there is an issue, but you cannot exactly understand what actually this problem is, right? So therefore, for the why you cannot come to that conclusion about your research problem, or why you cannot get a clear-cut definition of your research problem, the reason is the available knowledge is not enough to do so. That's when you have to go for a qualitative research. So then why you are going qualitative research? Mainly, I'm telling you, you know, there are many other reasons for you to go for qualitative research, but mainly one of the main reasons would be lack of literature, because you don't have enough literature to justify and, you know, to decide the rest of the direction of your research. Existing body of knowledge is not enough. So that's when you're going to do a qualitative research. So that's where, since you don't have enough literature, that's when theory gives you a good guidance, right? Direction for your research in qualitative research. That's why when you're doing qualitative research, you can see that you are relying on one or two theories for you to make so many decisions about your research. It gives you proper guidance because you are doing a research in a setting where you do not get much information to do a proper plan. Okay. Now, when it comes to quantitative research, since you have enough of literature, right? Never forget about research. Whenever we are making a plan, you know, plan will be implementable, right? And it will be a good plan when you have the right information for you to make that plan. Whenever you do not have, now whenever you have to make a budget for something, if you really do not have the, you know, the all the, like, if you have not yet defined the right steps of your project and the material required, and if you do not know the cost of them, of course you can't do that budget, because you don't have enough information. So when you do something, when you do not have enough information, that is susceptible to change. Because whenever you get that information, you come back to the original document and you change it, because now only you get that information. So then whatever that you have done, what was available at that time can now be changed. So qualitative research is also like that. You're starting with the little knowledge that you have. That's what it says here. Since you do not have enough literature for you to go for a clear-cut definition of your research, and for you to plan your research, what research design it would be, from whom I'm going to collect data. So you may not be able to make that decision like in a quantitative research at the very beginning of your research, when you're doing a qualitative research. So therefore, when you're presenting your research proposals, also if you're doing qualitative research, there can be, you know, unclear areas that you do not know at the time that you are presenting. So you have to convince the examiners that this is a qualitative research. So the direction can be changed and it is acceptable. That's why it says here, it's a flexible and versatile process. You're starting with the little knowledge that you have. So whenever you don't have the empirical literature about the thing that you're going to do, qualitative, you know, the theories that are available, which are relevant to your research, would be guiding at the outset of doing your research. But the real process, that what it will be, is not known to you at the beginning of the research. So that it goes as you get the information, because you don't have secondary data. You are mainly depending on primary data to plan your research as well. So therefore, as you get them, as you get to know them, as a result of your maybe preliminary study, you know, your plan would be different. Whatever that you have planned at the beginning with the little knowledge that you have, and as you collect, as you keep on getting new information, your plan would be changed. The direction would be changed. And that is also acceptable in qualitative research. So that is the role of theory. That's why if you have your own experience, most of the examiners would ask whenever you do qualitative research on what theories that you have depend on. Okay, so that's why that question comes usually. Yeah. And I think you know about these data collection techniques. Now, in quantitative research, we mainly use, that is a survey method you use, right? So because you're developing your questionnaire, again, based on the literature, for you to develop a questionnaire, you have to have enough of literature that supports your variable selection and the indicators, the measurements that you are selecting for each variable that are coming from, mostly from, if it is a pure quantitative, that is coming from literature, right? But here it's different. Main method of qualitative data collection would be interviews, but that can also be depending on, for example, if you do research in literature, or it can be English literature or Sinhala literature or archaeology. So their main method of data collection would be, you know, those published books or articles, or if anyone is doing research about religion, you know, if it is Buddhism, of course, those people go back and read those, maybe the books, the old books, those books from a different point of view that you're looking at about that particular subject. Okay, so therefore their primary data collection therefore is not interviews, but those those books, or maybe, you know, whatever those articles or documents or archives, they are going to understand it from a different point of view, aligning with their own research that they are carrying out. So but if you look at now, since I'm coming from business management, I'm telling you, for us, if it is business management mainly, way of data collection is interviews, right? We are doing interviews to collect data from the people. It's not like that you are giving a questionnaire and getting numbers. It's about, you know, questions that you're asking. So interviews are to, you know, 3 types, basically: semi-structured, unstructured, and focus group interviews are also there. So I will not explain them here because we don't have enough of time to do that. So this is basically interviews. And then, as I told you, there can be related documents that you can get from different sources that are already there. And sometimes the pictures, we take pictures, so there are some images that are already there. And observation basically 2 types: overt and covert. Now the overt is whenever the people know, the observees, whenever they know that they're being observed, that is called open or the overt observation. Covert observation is the most reliable way of observing, because they don't know that they are being observed, so therefore they will reflect their real behavior. Okay, they will reflect their real behavior, but you know, both of these types of observations are happening because you observe and collect data, right? Researcher is going to observe the real scenario, the phenomenon, what's happening in the real world, and then you're going to collect data for that. Right. And your interviews will be depending on interview guide. Most of the people call it questionnaire, which is wrong, of course. We don't use that word here because it's a different research methodology. It is called interview guide. You have to develop your interview guide. Literature might help you with the little literature that is available, might help you to formulate those questions in your interview guide. This is not a like 1 by 1 question 1 by 1. It is a guide. That's what it says. It's a interview guide. Otherwise, it's not like a set of questions that you have developed to ask from the respondents. It's not like that. They can come as bullet points, you know, in order to make sure that you're not going to forget anything. It's a guide. It is a guidance for the interviewer to ensure that the interviewer will be covering everything that you want to cover, and also to ensure that the interviewer will be on the track, right? So that's the purpose of it, right? Just to ensure that we are going to cover the whole thing about the research problem that you're carrying out. Otherwise, it's not a list of questions that you're going to ask as it is. Right? So then it can be a structured interview. Of course, in qualitative research, it's hardly you see that we do structured interviews, because for you to do structured interviews, you have to be very I mean, you have to have that prior knowledge before. That your questions are that specific and they are correct, and for you to be that definite about those things, you need to have more knowledge, more specific knowledge. Of course, if you have that, you can do it as a quantitative research as well. You don't have to necessarily go for a qualitative research. Okay, so therefore it is an interview guide that can be based on the past literature, theory, and your own knowledge also. Now, usually in quantitative research, you and the research are, they're trying to keep both you apart, right? You don't want to reflect, you don't have to give the idea to the reader that you are a part of the research. That's why you are writing the research, or in third person voice. That's how we write in quantitative research. But in qualitative research, we acknowledge that researcher is a part of the research process. Now, when you have been in a certain industry for more than about 30 to 35 years, and if you are doing research from your own industry, you can use your knowledge. Even when you're asking questions from the interviewees, if you're doing the interviews, you can develop the questions based on your knowledge. Just because of you're doing the research and when you have the right knowledge with you, it's very unfair. It's not worth that you are not bringing your knowledge that you have gathered by being in that industry for so many years. Just because you are the researcher, you cannot ignore. I mean, it's not good to ignore that knowledge. And so therefore you can bring your knowledge, but only thing is you'll have to get it verified by other sources as well. But it's always all right to bring your own knowledge when you're doing qualitative research. Right. And I think you may have heard of like this saturation rule in qualitative research. This comes whenever you have to decide about the sample size. Okay. Now in quantitative research, you have different softwares that will decide the sample size for you. But in here, as you keep on doing your interviews, whenever you can see that at a particular point of time, you get to understand that you are not getting any new information, right? So when you have done 7 interviews, and if you go back and see what other people have told you before, all other 6 people, and this 7th interview, when you put them together, if you see like even the 7th interviewee had not revealed anything, had not come up with anything new, right? Whatever that the 7th interview told has already been mentioned by other different people at different places. So then when I'm doing the 7th interview, if I feel that nothing new came out of that interview, you can do another interview for the safe side as well to see whether that is going to be like established, or that is going to be the case. Okay. So if the 8th person, when you are interviewing the 8th interviewee also, if you do not get anything new, if the 8th person also told you the same thing and the other people have told you at different times, so then, I mean, that indicates, all right, you have already gathered the data related to your research problem and you have come to sort of a saturized data point. Okay, you've been saturated now in terms of your data collection. It is saturized. So that's when you're going to stop your data collection if it is interviews. So that is called saturation rule. And that's how we decide the size of the sample for our research. So therefore, now you wouldn't be able to tell. Now, when I have seen many qualitative research, when they're presenting their research proposals, they say at the beginning, they say, okay, 10 interviews will be conducted, 12 interviews conducted. But how do you say that? You cannot say that number at the beginning. What you can say the number of interviews or the sample size will be depending on, will be stopped at the data saturation point. You can say like that at the proposal level, but you never can say I will do this many, that many, because that's why I told you qualitative research, the nature of qualitative research is like that, because I'm going to get some data that I do not know much about, unlike quantitative. Therefore, I will stop conducting interviews when the data is saturized. That's what you can say. Right. I don't know how many more minutes I've got, please. Hello?
Now 10:52 and we are going to stop it's about 11 a.m.
Yeah, well, how many more minutes?
Or more about 15 minutes ago.
15 minutes. Do
Yeah.
I have 15 minutes? All right. Okay, I'll be able to finish this part. Right. So qualitative data analysis. everyone is worrying about qualitative data analysis because there are certain softwares also that are associated with qualitative data analysis, but never think that, when you do your research, qualitative research, that the software will do everything for you. It's not like that, right? Of course, in quantitative research, yes, since they are numbers, it doesn't matter who analyze that data. Since they are numbers are given the same, numbers are the same for everyone. So that does not depend on the person who is analyzing that data, because number, if it is number 3, it is number 3 for you, it is number 3 for me as well. So it doesn't matter since it is a number. But when you have collected your data as, because basically what we will analyze in qualitative data analysis is words, or sometimes pictures, sometimes images, sometimes diagrams. So therefore, what these pictures would tell to you, right, will be different to another person. But it doesn't say that, that you have that level of liberty. Yeah, you have, but I have to ensure that I'm interpreting, because researcher plays a bigger role in qualitative data analysis, right? You will see chunk of data and how you are interpreting that data, what message it gives to you, that is interpretation. That interpretation would be a result of your knowledge about the research, right? So that knowledge would come from your own experience and the knowledge that you gathered through reading the right theory for your research, and also what were the literature that was available, right? So as a result of doing all these things, because you have done interviews by yourself, you have talked to the people, with that knowledge only, you will be able to interpret your data correctly. Someone else who is outside the research would not know as much as you know about your research. Therefore, qualitative data analysis process cannot be outsourced like quantitative. Quantitative, you can easily hand over your data set to someone, and if they know the hypothesis, they will do that for you and give you the result sheet. But here it's not like that. It has to be you, the researcher. That's what it says. It's like handling your own rat. In qualitative research, we used to call it, handling your own rat. It's because it's your own thing that you have to handle. You never can outsource it, because no one knows in and out of your research. Even conducting interviews cannot be, people do that, but it is not actually effective, because you're the one who knows in and out of your research. Whenever you're asking questions, you may ask the right question or different questions. Whenever you see that the first interviewee, whenever you have interviewed the first interviewee, and when it comes to the second one, if the second one is coming with totally different views to this first interviewee, you have to clarify this out. Okay, so then, since you know it only, you see this difference. Someone else does that for you, they will just ask the question, and whatever they say, they'll record and come. So these clarification discrepancies, and when someone had talked about something when the other person is not going to talk about, so you'll have to probe them and clarify them, and there should be so many cross questions. So that's how you usually do your data collection. And therefore, at the data collection point, there can be, interviews, documents, pictures, right? And then you are coming to data display. So this is basically the process, right? I will actually, I don't know whether I have enough time to talk about this thing, but I'll try see with the data analysis. So this process has been given by Miles and Huberman, who they were the people who were first talked about this proper way of doing qualitative data analysis. This is quite old. There are many other, Brown and Clark and also have come up with different data analysis processes. But I actually personally didn't see any difference. They are also doing the same thing, but they have, different names are there for different processes, but processes are the same. Now, this is what basically we do first in qualitative data analysis process, and then you have to get them displayed. Whenever you see something, it becomes very clear, right? Now you have interviews that you have done. So what you have to do is you have to get them transcribed, right? Transcribing is to write word by word. You have to listen to that and you have to get into a document. Once you have done it, that document is called interview transcription. Okay, so you'll have to display that data, right? and also, and the other thing that you have to decide before you're going to start data analysis process is, am I going to do with software or am I going to do that manually? It doesn't matter however you do that, which way that you, whether you use the software or not is a critical element in analysis evaluation process of your research. But when you're using a software, it gives you more flexibility to analyze your data, and it gives you, it supports you to organize your data. It is quite easier, and it will also give you a different level of analysis, in-depth analysis that you cannot do manually. There's a difference like that, but however, even manually you can, do a basic level of analysis of your data. So you have to decide that first of all, because if you're going to do with the software, you'll have to have everything in soft copies, even the collected documents, the physical, the printouts, let's say that you have to scan them and get ready. If you're using your pictures, whatever, you have to get them scanned, you have to have all those soft copies with you. But if that is manually, better you take printouts that you can, in a way that you can see them, okay? So data display, therefore, is to put them together, to convert them into a format that you can see the data. And here, and then you're going to data reduction. Data reduction is, now basically the qualitative data analysis process is called thematic analysis, okay? Now, thematic analysis, themes are the probable answers for your research questions. Something that I forgot to tell you. When you look at the research questions of qualitative research, they are how and why questions. They are how and why questions, okay? Because in qualitative research, there can be what type of questions as well. But if you have 3 research questions in your research, and if all of them are what questions, of course, it doesn't look like a qualitative research. Because when you say how, someone has to explain a process of doing something. When you say why, someone has to explain about the reasons of doing something. So therefore, that's when you're going to understand something in depth, how and why, right? How you do that, why that happens. So when how and why questions are there only, you'll be able to understand a particular phenomenon in depth. And that is the purpose of qualitative research, because you're starting with very little knowledge and you want to broaden that knowledge, right? So for that, you need to have this how and why nature of questions. So therefore, when you are developing your research questions at the beginning of your research, they have to be how and why nature of questions. What questions can be there, but how and why questions are also, they must be there. Otherwise, it does not look like a qualitative research, okay? So then when the themes are the answers, the probable answers for your research questions. If you have a research questions called how, then there should be themes that explains how, answer for the how. And then if you have another research question, why, your themes, for that research questions that you have generated should be the reasons for what you're asking. So they are called themes. Since you are coming up with themes in qualitative research as the probable answers for your research questions, we can call it a thematic analysis. And this is the process we do, thematic analysis. Okay, so you collect your data. I'm giving you a very brief explanation. So then we have to convert them into a format that you can see that data, right? And data reduction is actually now, for me to identify a particular theme, there should be evidence, support from the data that I have collected. That process we call coding in qualitative data analysis process. We call that coding. Okay, so you have to prove I have understood this particular theme based on these responses that people have given. Okay, so that is called coding. You show how this theme came up, how I understood this as particular theme. The support that you have got from the data that you have collected must be shown, that is connected to the theme. So that part is coding, and that is when you are reducing data. Because when you collect a lot of data, now when you have conduct interviews and when you have transcribed and convert that to a interview transcription, you're not going to code everything in your, entire document cannot be coded. coding is to pick the compelling quotations, right? Very strong quotations to support the theme that you are talking about. So but although you are just highlighting, picking quotations like that, it doesn't mean that the entire idea is coming only from that few lines. Entire idea has come from throughout the interview that you have conducted. But that's what it's called, interpretation. Entire data collection has helped you to get that broader understanding, and now you're doing coding. Okay, so therefore you're reducing certain data, but you pick certain data to be coded. So that is actually called data reduction. And finally, you are coming to clear-cut set of thematic, themes, and there are many ways or, strategies, processes, steps are there. Since this is just a basic level of understanding, I will not go to that level. Yeah, so that is basically what we do in thematic analysis. And also you can see there are different, directions of arrows here. Okay, different directions of arrows here. It doesn't show you the flexibility in data analysis, because it doesn't say that you have to do this, and of course you're starting from here. But when you are here also, without going to data display, sometimes you can do data reduction, and this is again a double way arrow, right? Data, because you do this, you go back and double check whether what you have done is correct. And here also you can see double way arrow. Here also it's the same. And when you have come to the conclusions also, you always, then again, you can go back to the beginning to see whether what you have collected is right, whenever whenever you can see that whatever that the things that you have come up are quite deviated from the theory support and the available literature and all, you can go back to the data collection process to see, whether I have missed anything or I have to do something else. So therefore, this is a very flexible process. Okay, this is the message I want to give you. More than the steps of the data analysis, this is a very flexible, very versatile process. It's not like one after the other. And also the other thing, remember, all these things are happening in your mind. These things we do in your mind, you are playing this role, not a software. Software will help you to organize, to transcribe data, to get the data, prominent, research certain things that you have missed out. But it is your thinking, right? You're the one who is doing analysis with the help of a software. So that's what I want to highlight, right? And the same thing is described here. So of course, when it comes, the last point is about reliability, validity. These terms are coming from positivism paradigm. Positivists are talking about reliability, validity. But Lincoln and Guba, well-known researchers in qualitative research, they were actually criticizing using this reliability and validity, these two terms in qualitative research, because this is basically not, because we are not dealing with numbers to calculate them and get them. We're actually looking at the quality of our data, whether we have collected the right data to come up with themes. That's our purpose. So that's why Lincoln and Guba, instead of reliability and validity, Lincoln and Guba has come up with trustworthiness. That is a term that they would like to use. Trust, whether you can trust your data, whether your data is trustworthy, and are they quality enough? Okay, so therefore we call it quality of data or trustworthiness of data. And I would say, since we do not have data, since we do not have numbers and the techniques to measure them, like in quantitative research, we are relying on the process, our research process. Now, if you just look at the meaning of these two words, reliability is called consistency, right? Validity is accuracy. So consistency is for you to see the same repetition, of course, the other words. Okay, whenever you see the same thing has been told by different people, it gives you the consistency. The same thing is appearing at many places. Consistency, replication logic, right? Validity is the accuracy, whether it is right. Now, so that's this is the these are the different meaning of these two different terms. So you don't have to necessarily be depending on numbers to do that. You can ensure whether my data is consistent and whether my data is correct. So that can be, that is actually ensured. The way that we ensure trustworthiness of our data is through the process that we do. That's why qualitative research have to be very careful and very carefully document the process. Everything must be reported in very much detail, the research process. The reason is that is through what? The examiner, or in your case, it could be examiner or someone else who reads your paper or your research report would judge the quality of your findings, whether they are rigorous, reliable findings, because whenever your data doesn't seem to be trustworthy or trustworthy or quality enough, we cannot we cannot say that the conclusions are reliable as well. Yeah, I might not go to these details, of course. I don't know whether you will, if you want, I can share this, but we need to go through a little more detail. I think even if you can go read this, you can understand. So this is basically the criteria given by Lincoln and Gruber at the very beginning: credibility, dependability, transferability, confirmability. So that's how actually we are looking at. We have to show in your report, you have to show, this is how I ensure the credibility, right? Triangulation, iteration, refutation, replication logic, as I told you, and even dependability, right? Triangulation, negative cases, that is coming to case studies, and the transferability is whether someone else can rely on your report, your research to do that person's research. That's why you need to have careful description, right? That is called thick description, as I told you. Someone else would judge your research, the reliability of the data and everything that you have collected through the process you have followed. So for other person to decide that, you need to carefully document the way that you have done the research, how you have like selected the respondents, done the interviews and analyzed data. Everything in very much detail must be reported. Finally, you can also do audit trails. Audit trails is like, you can go back to, you can send your interview transcriptions to your respondents to check whether they are right, or even after you have concluded, your research findings can also be shared with them to ensure whether this is what they have actually mentioned when they were interviewed. If it is not, you can correct them, because I have interpreted what they have told me. So if I wanted to ensure that the way that I have interpreted these raw data is correct, for that you can do audit trails. You have to follow the same interview protocol for all the interviews. So there are certain things like that. With this, I think this little knowledge will help you to read more about it and understand it. In respect of time, I may have to stop at this point, please.